people, stay dandy, baby.
Greetings, my friends. I'm Corey, and joined with me today is Christian. We're Ace Guru, and we have a very special video for you guys today. It's kind of a sad video, though, because we're going to be honoring the late and great Kentaro Miura, who is the creator of the Berserk manga and anime franchise. And unfortunately, within just the past couple of days, we have learned that he has passed away at the age of 54. And this is really devastating, to say the least, because I think that Kentaro Miura was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most influential manga creators for creating what is arguably one of the greatest dark fantasy stories ever told, Berserk. And unfortunately, Berserk was a really long-running manga series. And it may never get finished at this point. But instead of just lamenting over that the entire point of this video, I think we just want to talk a little bit more about the influence of Berserk, what it means to us as fans of the franchise, and where it could potentially go from here. But before we jump into that, remember guys, if you do like our content, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit that bell notification icon. It'll let you know when all of our videos are released, and make sure to also support us through Patreon. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. First and foremost, just the loss of Kentaro Miura. I didn't see this coming, but there have been a lot of hiatuses in terms of the release of the chapters, so it does kind of make sense.
Yeah, so where were you when you heard he had passed? Because I think I was on Reddit, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I almost thought it was a troll post. Because what is the thing you always hear about Berserk? The thing you always hear about Berserk is, oh my god, the guy's going to die before they finish it. Mm-hmm. And him being in his 50s, you're like, okay, he is old, but I'm sure he could do it into his 70s if he really wanted to. You know, it would just come out even slower, or maybe he would release longer chapters, but something would happen to finish Berserk eventually. So when the creator passed away, I was like, man, that's like a meme that I didn't think was ever going to come true. And you know, I did tell you, essentially.
Yeah, like, the news actually broke on the 19th of May, and we were actually busy on a shoot during that time. We came back the next morning, and then you just, like, walked in the room as we were testing out some brand new equipment, and you're like, Corey, have you heard the news? Did you know who passed away? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And then you just said the creator of Berserk, and I didn't believe you at first.
No,
because it was so devastating to know, because, again, he was only 54. And I didn't realize that he actually had these health issues, but it does make sense considering that all of the chapters have been coming out at such a slow pace.
Yeah,
and it's such a shame because the Berserk manga series has been consistently amazing the entire time, even due to Miura's health. It's always looked really good. The writing has always been really solid. But it does suck to know that there is the potential fact that the series may not continue. But whether that's a good or a bad thing, I think depends on the person you are. So I wanted to get your kind of, like, your thoughts on that.
So Berserk is such an influential series for me because it was the first, like, manga I ever read that, one, there was a lot more manga out than the anime ever covered. So when I sort of started discovering Berserk, I realized, oh man, like, I'm going to read all this and get way ahead of where the show could ever go. Little did I know the show would probably never be made that far. Like, they're just never going to get it right. So they just kind of stopped trying. I think it was Berserk 2016 that failed so bad that it was just like, they're never making another Berserk show. And but overall, like, how I feel about it being over is, it's left at a pretty good place. Like, where they're currently at, they're on the fairy island. Casca's been healed. You know, Guts is realizing he's probably going to have to do some sort of, like, reintroduction to Casca slowly, or, like, not at all, but because she gets triggered with PTSD every time she sees him. And everyone's learning magic, and they're kind of, like, beefing up all their characters. And one of the last things we see in the last chapter that was ever released is the Moonchild coming to visit. And the Moonchild is, you know, it's definitely sharing the same body with Griffith, so there's that whole subplot going on. And then there's also, like, it is their child, you know, and it shares a body with Griffith. And essentially the series ends with them on Fairy Island getting to probably be with their child, you would assume would come next in the next chapter. And Griffith having his own, you know, kingdom. And maybe that's kind of how the show's going to end.
I mean, you know, in my mind, of course, you know, in the most stereotypical of senses, the series was building up to that eventual conclusion, that big final confrontation between Guts and Griffith. And whether we get there or not, you know, it might never happen, but everything that's been happening in the last couple of chapters has been at least kind of cathartic in what it's been leading up to, especially in terms of the relationship between Guts and Casca and everything. That's sort of been like the heart of the entire series, is the relationship between all three of those characters.
Yeah, and I know the moment that happened in this show. The moment that happened is when Griffith came back and was fighting Zod. Guts saw Griffith, and then instead of like running towards him to kill him, because you know the whole show was about revenge, and Guts' revenge on Griffith, he instead stopped and turned around and helped his friends, and they left.
And what a juxtaposition to basically the entire series overall, which is, you know, there's no sugarcoating it. Berserk is one of the bloodiest, most intense manga that there is.
There's no jokes there. Well, there is humor, but it's a serious show. Meant for adults.
And it really seems like the entire series was trying to build up to that moment where there was going to be like that final bloody conclusion. And now things have sort of like mellowed out a lot towards the end here. I don't think that was going to be the true conclusion. I had a feeling, we were even talking about this yesterday, whether the series was going to have like a happy ending or it was going to have like a more realistic, more sad type of ending. And again, we may never know, but I mean, it brings up the even bigger question. Is someone going to pick up the series? Can someone do just as good as Kentaro Miura in terms of his artwork and his writing? And I don't really have a solid answer to that because that series was so distinctly Kentaro Miura.
So you want a artist, which I understand the want of. I have an artist come in, take notes, take from his notes, you know, and make an ending. An art team comes in, a writing team comes in, and they try to finish it. Or at least come out with like an OVA or a fucking special 100-page book or some sort of super edition. I don't know if I need that. I think I just want Berserk to live in its best medium it ever existed in, and that was those mangas.
It is just the manga. And you know, getting back to just like how we got exposed to Berserk for the first time, for me, it was not the manga originally. It was the...
it was the cool old show from the 90s or the early 2000s,
yeah,
whatever
it was the mid-90s version of Berserk, which I still believe, while not a perfect adaptation of the manga series, I think is probably the best that we've ever seen from
closest,
it. In terms of just the atmosphere and sort of capturing the feeling of reading that manga. Just the music and the voices and everything that came from that show is sort of like what really got me into the series in the very first place, and it's what sort of drove me to discover the manga for the very first time, which to this day, you know, I might even go as far as to say Berserk is my favorite manga. It's the only one that I collect. And I collect a lot of anime. I love anime. You know that. You see my collection. It's ridiculous. But I've never really gotten around to collecting a lot of manga. But Berserk is that one that really got me into it. It's the type of thing that you don't even necessarily have to read the dialogue a lot of times. You can just admire the artwork.
No, it's just really well drawn.
And I do that a lot. Like, I'll read the whole thing, and then I'll read it again just to kind of get the story. And then I'll just go back through just to appreciate all of the amazing attention to detail that goes into every single frame, and I can say that a lot of manga don't go that extra mile in terms of what they do. And again, speaking volumes to Kentaro Miura, like of what creative control he had over this series, it was his in every sense of the way. He was the guy who worked on this. I'd like to think that he probably had some apprentices or some people who were helping him in some way, but ultimately that was his baby that he was creating, and he poured his sweat, blood, and tears into every single chapter.
Yeah, it's a show. The show Berserk is essentially about how you're going to get kind of beat up throughout life, and you have to find your happiness while bearing your scars.
Pretty much.
It is not a show. It was like the first show I ever watched where the ending wasn't happy, and you had to be okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back, you watch that 90s anime series, you look at that final episode, and you know nothing about Berserk, because I didn't know much about it either. I went into this thing, I'm like, all right, I'm going to try this out and see what it's like. And you get to that final episode, and it is quite possibly the most depressing final episode of anything that I have ever seen.
But if you want to look at like how the Golden Age ends, it's essentially the eclipse happens, the Skull Knight saves them, and then they have to start a life where they have to live with the PTSD of that happening.
Yeah.
It wasn't that now they're, you know, they trained for a while, they're stronger and more ready to take on the world. It's like, no, they all have demons and they've kind of been psychologically screwed. You know, like that's kind of how the series starts. And, and Guts even fails for the first year or two because he goes off and just tries to kill everything, leaves Casca at the blacksmith's house, and then comes back and finds out Casca's been escaped on accident.
Yeah.
And then the blacksmith pretty much calls him out and says, hey, you can't say anything to us because you've been gone for a year.
You dropped this on us, and you left us to take care of this.
Yeah. And that's kind of when the show becomes an adventure again. It becomes kind of like Dark Lord of the Rings, where they all go on an adventure together.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's amazing, too, that the series, and I've said this many times, of how it can juggle this story of being just raw, brutal, amazing action, but also having quite possibly one of the deepest and dare I say, most human stories that I've ever read.
Yeah.
The thing that's remarkable about Berserk is, again, due to its setting, which is like kind of like a fantasy medieval kind of setting, it has a timeless story. It's the type of thing that 100 years from now you can read it, and its themes and its character progression and everything is going to be just as strong then as when it was written.
Well, the quiet conversations matter as much as the big fights in that show. You know, like you look at some of these big fights, you don't see someone powering up to Super Saiyan while they're spitting out dialogue.
Yeah.
You see them by a campfire talking about something, and then something horrible happens in a battle the next day.
Yeah.
They're not swinging swords and talking ideology.
No, but they can also just go into the realm of absolute ridiculousness on the next page as well.
Absolutely.
With monsters and crazy armor and giant weapons and these really big, giant, grandiose storylines, which ultimately don't even seem like they would gel too well with that type of storytelling. But Miura made it work every single time. It really is one hell of an accomplishment. I've also made peace with the fact that there's never going to be any sort of anime adaptation that can live up to the manga.
They tried real hard.
They've tried.
Yeah.
I love the 90s one, like I said, mostly for its atmosphere. I think the movie trilogy was pretty good for what it was, just in terms
But it's
of...
just another Golden Age rehash.
Pretty much.
Over that.
It did show us things that we never got to see animated before, like Skull Knight and all that other stuff. And the less said about the most recent adaptation, the better, because it did not work.
I didn't like it, but I was happy there was new Berserk.
I will say yes, it was cathartic to see it happen, because it's just like, oh, it's finally we get to see this type of stuff.
Or they're trying to make more,
Yeah, we
good for
finally
them.
get to see the Black Swordsman stuff, which is, probably the most popular era of Berserk, I'd have to say.
Oh, when he was solo, just killing everything?
Pretty much, yeah, just going nuts and finally beginning his first journey after the whole eclipse and everything. But yeah, it was really strong material. But I'm not even sure what I want for the future of Berserk anymore.
See, I do. I know
again,
clearly.
Which is?
I want it to be over. I want them to, live on the fairy island, and Griffith gets his kingdom and helps people. By the way, he helped people. He took in a lot of people. He also caused the world to implode, but, I don't know. Tomato on that one. And then, they get to live on Fairy Island and work on their PTSD.
Yeah.
And that's as good as it gets.
For the sake of quality, for the sake of artwork, for the sake of the storytelling, it might be the best way to end it, but at the same time, I do want to see Guts get his revenge against Griffith, I mean, yes, you can argue that Griffith has done good things, but look at all the bad things he's done. Look at who he sacrificed to get where he is in the current storyline.
Yeah.
It's, it's getting to see that not get finished that is going to bug me ultimately. Not to mention just all of the other, threads which are still kind of like unsaid. Everything about the Skull Knight, everything about the God Hand. There's so many things that are going to be left undone in the series. And I just don't know who is going to be able to pull it off at the end.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. I'm okay with it. You kind of maybe want more. Where Berserk goes from here is one, I think hopefully the fans will have something to say. Maybe they'll put out polls and kind of talk to us before they make a new thing if they try to. Maybe they'll just hopefully lead with the best intentions and not just to make money off of it as the rights go to different places.
Exactly. I really hope that this doesn't turn into a battle for the rights of the series in order to make money off of it. Yeah. That's my biggest fear. Again,
you don't want to make the dead corpse of Guts dance around for
No,
dollar
I
bills,
don't. I don't want this to be a Disney by Star Wars situation. Like, I really want the series to go out in grace, and if that means ending where it is now or finding someone competent enough to work on the ending, I think is the best possible scenario. But one more question I do want to pose to you, because this is something that a lot of people have been talking about, and I do think it's interesting in how it pertains to the industry overall. So, Kentaro Miura passing away was really sudden, and it was unexpected, and it basically means we're potentially not going to get the end of the series. Do you think that this is going to have an effect on other long-running popular manga series, like, say, One Piece or Boruto, or even a ton of others, One Punch Man?
Yeah.
Do you think that these creators are going to see what happened to him and continue the way they're going to do things, or they're like, maybe I need to find a way to wrap things up in an appropriate amount of time?
I don't know. There's a lot of ways to go about it. It sounds like hurry up and end it or don't, but there's like 1,000 other choices in there, honestly. But yes, do I think it's going to affect someone like Oda? I would take note of it if I was him. But I bet if I was smart, like if I was one of those guys, what I would do is write the ending and have it ready to go, and then just keep making the show to get to that point.
Yeah.
And then if I die, they could just,
That's why I'm curious. They haven't mentioned anything. Like,
does the guy not have any will?
Like a Berserk Bible that explains, like, this is how it's all going to
guide?
end. Like, can someone pick up my work and continue this? Even if not in manga format, we just need some sort of light novel or a book or something to explain how this is all going to end.
Release his notes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a pretty good way to sort of honor him
Just
in
release the
somewhat a way.
notes. That's all I need. I don't need you to make it a thing.
Yeah.
I just want to know what he wanted, and that's good enough.
Okay.
For
well,
me.
so here's the thing. Kentaro Miura passing away is a terrible thing. He was a great creator. No doubt had a massive influence on dark fantasy overall. I think things like Game of Thrones, the Dark Souls video games, none of this stuff would
Cloud
exist.
from Final Fantasy.
Just the giant, are you talking about just the giant
Yeah,
sword
and
alone?
then the dude with the gun hand is like Guts with the cannon on.
There you go. Just giant weapons in general.
There's a lot of, even Zephyrus looks like Griffith. Okay.
Zephyrus?
What's his name? Or the bad guy from Final Fantasy VII? Is it Zephyrus? No.
Sephiroth?
Sephiroth. I got the sounds right.
You're so not a Final Fantasy
No,
fan.
I don't know. But
It's
I'm
totally
saying they
okay.
copy. That dude looks like Griffith kind of too.
No, he definitely, like I said, the
Yeah.
influence of these characters that have been around for so long, you can definitely see them in all of the various genres, and that cannot be denied. And even though the story may never be finished, I think we can appreciate what we have and what we can continue to enjoy and read and pass on to our other friends. Berserk is never going away. It still has legendary status, and I think it's only going to be more beloved at this point. And I think that's something important. If anything, it might even bring more awareness to a series which is already pretty well known amongst the anime and manga community. But this could be like another way to expose it to a whole group of other people. And if it means they get to read more of this show, or watch the show, read the manga, I think that's a really important thing.
No, I couldn't agree more. I'm sad Berserk's over. But I don't forget the times I had that were great. You know, this show's great. Maybe more is not coming out, but it's not going to take away from how much I appreciate this series. And I'm just glad that I got to read it. You know, I am. I'm just glad I got to experience it.
Damn right. So, Kentaro Miura, thank you for all of the amazing work. Really do appreciate it. We would really love to hear from you guys, though. Obviously, the passing of Kentaro Miura is a really big deal. Were you a fan of his works, Berserk, some of the other things that he worked on? Berserk, of course, was his magnum opus. Are you surprised and shocked by his death? And what do you want from the future of the Berserk franchise? Do you want it to continue? Do you want it to just sort of end right here with the death of the creator? Let's have a big discussion all about it in the comments section below. And that's basically it, guys. So again, if you liked this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can see more content just like this. Christian, I hope you can join me for more videos. I wanted to bring you in on this one because I know you love Berserk, and it's had a huge influence on you as an anime and manga fan.
Yes.
So it was really important that I wanted to get your input on that. And that's basically it, guys. Like I said, just tell us what you think about the Berserk franchise and just like that. Again, make sure to check us out on Patreon. Make sure to support the channel, go that extra mile, give us those monthly donations. Remember, first-time donators, we'll review anime series of your choice. We have a number of Patreon reviews which are going to be coming up really soon, so make sure to check out all that really great stuff. I would also love to add your name to this list of people that you're currently seeing on screen right now. These guys are the big badass berserkers of Ace Guru. That wraps up this video today, guys, and as I always like to say, stay dandy, baby.